hello to the next segment of the Cross-Border Talks program, and this is the fourth episode. We are approaching now a very contentious issue which takes place on the border of the EU. For a number of time, many migrants from the Middle East have been reaching European borders through Belarus, and there has been a humanitarian crisis on the border between Belarus and three countries of the EU, namely Lithuania, Latvia, and Poland. Malgorzata, what is going on there?
Well, in fact, there are historical events going on in Poland, I might say, because Poland has declared a state of emergency on the border for the first time in last 3 decades. And our government is saying that we are in the state of hybrid war against Belarus, or more precisely that Belarus has waged hybrid war against Poland. And the migrants, like the government is saying, omitting the refugees term, are basically Belarus weapon in the hybrid war. What is exactly going on is that from the beginning of August, migrants and refugees from a dozen of countries of Middle East are coming to Polish border and requesting for international protection. These people are indeed coming from Belarusian territory, and I will explain in a moment how did the Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, or Egyptian citizens end up in Belarus. But the problem is that these people are coming to the border, they are trying to cross the border in an illegal way, and then they are asking for international protections, which Polish border guard is refusing to them. For the last few weeks, Polish border guardsmen have been pushing these people back to Belarusian territory, refusing to accept their application for international protection. And the most flagrant case that gained the biggest attention from the media was the case of about 30 migrants from Afghanistan camping at the border near the village of Usnaż Górny, that is in northeastern Poland, who were basically kept in the borderland by Polish and Belarusian border guards. I mean, those people coming from Belarusian territory intended to cross the border, intended to ask for international protections, but the Polish border guards didn't allow them to progress. They set camps on the border. At the same time, the Belarusian border guards do not allow them to go back into Belarus. Both sides claim that these people are in the other country's territory and that the other country is supposed to offer them some basic humanitarian aid. But the situation looks like that these people are camping between borders, but without access to medical help, with just basic food provided by the Belarusian side, with no legal help, because there were organizations on the Polish sides, pro-refugee foundations, who wanted to offer them legal help in Poland, but who were not allowed to talk to these people. And basically, last Thursday, Polish president declared a state of emergency on the border, so that there are no media now allowed to reach the border, there are no activists allowed to talk to the migrants, and basically we are left without credible information on what is going on further. Today, Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki held a press conference when he repeated Poland has been attacked by Belarus in hybrid way, that Lukashenko is sending those migrants deliberately to Polish border because he is angry with how Poland supported pro-democratic protests last year, and that Poland now has the duty to secure European borders so that no migrants will be allowed into the country. No humanitarian aid is supposed to come to them because they are in Belarus, as Polish state is reiterating. And so that is the situation. And in a few hours, Polish parliament is going to vote again on the state of emergency, because if the opposition happens to gather enough votes, they might refuel the presidential decree on the state of emergency. but I might say this is not very likely to come into being because the opposition is divided as well on the issue. Those are, in fact, only the Social Democratic Party, the left, or Lewica in Polish, who is standing for giving humanitarian aid to these people. The other parties are skeptical and believe what the government says, so that if we accept this one group of migrants, then more of them will come, and the problem can become solvable for Poland.
If migrants are treated as weapon, what is their condition as human, as in terms of health and living conditions right now, and what is being done for them?
Well, from the Polish side, not only nothing is done for them, but even medics and activists were prevented from reaching them with basic help. A few days ago, a video went viral in Poland depicting a Polish member of parliament, Franek Sterczewski, trying to reach these people camping on the border with a plastic bag containing food and medicines. And he basically tried to run through the lines of the border guards so that he could give these things to the people, but he was finally stopped and prevented from reaching them. Also, there were doctors coming from nearby cities, the nearby city of Białystok, offering to examine the refugees, and also they were not allowed to reach the campment because the border guards keep saying that they are on the Belarusian side. Belarusian border guards, on their part, they are supplying the refugees with food. They also allowed a delegation of the Red Cross to see these people recently. But this is basically everything they are doing for them. And these people are still on the border, hopelessly waiting that somebody lets them through Europe. Somebody offers them international protection, which is not being offered neither by Belarus nor by Poland.
And how does this situation look like from Belarusian point of view? What does Belarus say, and how exact these migrants appear to reach Belarus in first time, and then technically how they reach the border? What is the attitude of Belarusian state to that?
Okay, so indeed, there is a bit of truth in what is Polish government saying that Belarus is deliberately bringing these people to the border of both Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia, because indeed, for a few months, Belarus and Belarusian companies, Belarusian state companies connected to presidential administrations, have been offering to the citizens of Iraq mainly, but also to other Middle Eastern countries to come to a trip to Belarus, which is in fact not a tourist trip at all, but rather an opportunity to get to Minsk by plane from Baghdad and then be escorted to the border, where the Russian border guards are either forcing people to go through the border illegally, or helping them by showing where to go and how can they reach Lithuanian, Polish, and Latvian territory. And sadly, this is a business where indeed people are treated like a weapon, because a lot of people, for these Iraqi migrants, but also Syrian, Egyptian, the Tajik people, Afghani people, a lot of people from the whole Middle East and Central Asia, they are told by these Belarusian companies that if they pay a few $100s, they will be offered a flight to Minsk, and they will be settled in a hotel in Minsk for a few days, and then they will be brought to European Union. That is what these people hear from the Belarusian companies. And some of the migrants who reached Latvian and Lithuanian border and who were then stopped by the border guards of those countries were actually convinced that they are being brought to Germany, that the Russian border guards are bringing them to Germany, so the very heart of European Union. And yes.
We need to remember that in last August there were protests in Belarus, which attracted a lot of international attention, and they were related to presidential elections in Belarus and the strengthening of control the president Lukashenko, also his approximation to Russia's Putin president. So we know that there is geopolitics in the play between Belarus and the EU, or Russia and the EU, for quite some time. How does this situation now enters into geopolitics?
Okay, where perhaps we are reaching the most tragic dimension of the whole crisis, because indeed it is geopolitics that pushed Lukashenko to organize this. I don't want to see this whole thing with the migrants on the EU borders, because last year already Lukashenko said that in the past he used to secure European border by stopping drug trafficking, by fighting human trafficking, and by fighting illegal migration too. And if European Union treats him like the last dictator of Europe and the one who must be removed from political scene, then he does not feel obliged anymore to help European Union in any way. And not long after this declaration, the migrants from the Middle East started to appear on Lithuanian border. It was Lithuanian border first because Lithuania offered asylum to Svetlana Tsikhanouska, the leader of Belarusian democratic opposition, and it's Lithuania who is the most vocal critic of Lukashenko's government, who is offering the biggest help to the Belarusian opposition, and who was also calling in the strongest voice to bring sanctions to Belarus. However, Lithuania reacted very decisively to what Lukashenko did. As far as I know, Lithuanian border guards are also pushing people back to the border. The procedure of pushbacks was legalized by Lithuanian the internal ministry. Lithuania claims that it is not obliged to accept demands for international protections as long as the migrants are informed of other options. So in practice, it looks like that if the illegal migrants are spotted by Lithuanian border guards, they are pushed back to Belarus just with an information that if they want international protections, they must appear officially on a border crossing, which means that these people then try to cross the border again and again, because the Belarusian border guards are not helping them to reach these border crossings at all. So Lithuania reacted in this way, putting all those people who were spotted inside Lithuanian territory into refugee centers, and then the migrants started to appear on Latvian and Polish border. So, as I said already, the situation is absolutely a tragedy for people who are truly hoping to get a better life in Europe, because the countries from whom they come are destroyed by war, they are destroyed by natural disasters, they are destroyed by internal conflicts, and I am absolutely not surprised by the fact that people are catching every opportunity to get somehow close into Europe, particularly that going through Belarus seems much safer than Mediterranean routes or the Balkanian ones. Well, on the other hand, they are being cynically played by Belarusian government. And here I would like just to differentiate between Belarus and Russia, because you mentioned Putin, and Polish government also likes to say that this is a provocation settled together by Lukashenko and Putin. So, well, honestly, in my opinion, it is Russia did not need to inspire Lukashenko to do this, to organize this kind of operation. I find Lukashenko's original idea, his own way to settle things with Poland and other neighbors. Russia is Russia. I don't think that Russia would like to get these people into its own territory or risk getting them into its territory, as there is no border in practice between Belarus and Russia. So here I would say it is Lukashenko's original idea, which of course does not change the fact that we are dealing with a cynical game, anti-humanitarian game, and that Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia are now being used in Belarusian propaganda.
Okay, there is another important geopolitical player, the EU, which also has, I guess, different approaches to the migrant issue. On one hand, there is this tendency for strengthening of borders, but on the other hand, the European economy and societies need migrants as workforce. So what is the EU's attitude towards this crisis right now?
So far, the European Union's position is pretty clear that Poland has the right to secure borders, and Poland is receiving European Union support in this case. And honestly, I haven't heard a voice recently saying that it is our duty to offer humanitarian aid to the migrants, or that we could actually allow them into Europe because they are coming from the war-torn countries. So, in fact, when Poland declared that there was a crisis on the border and that we needed extra means to secure the borders, the support from European Commission came very fast. And the European Commission hurried to say that Poland not only had the right to secure borders and to use the extra means, so soldiers supporting border guards and so on, but also it was Poland's task to secure eastern border of the European Union. And it was shocking even to some politicians of the opposition in Poland to hear Vera Jourova, so the European Commissar who criticized Poland for for the destruction of the rule of law under the present government, to hear her saying that she trusted actually the government of Poland in this very case, that we had the right to protect borders, that we need to protect borders, and that he trusts that the Polish government is doing the right thing. In fact, the only more nuanced position that explained the need to support these people, to help the migrants, came from the European Justice Tribunal, from the for the European Tribunal for Human Rights, European Courts for Human Rights, who in the second or third week of the crisis said that Poland is obliged to give basic humanitarian aid to these 30 migrants stuck on the border. The court said that they must be offered medical aid, they must be offered food and water, and if possible, Poland also should provide them with some kind of shelter. They did not specify what kind, and they also said that it does not mean that Poland is obliged to allow them into its territory. Nevertheless, it was quite clear position that Poland cannot just watch how 30 people are stuck on the border, living in some provisional camps and having no access to food and drink for days. Nevertheless, Poland simply ignored that ruling, and there was a very short official comment from the side of the government saying that these people are in Belarusian territory, so Poland cannot do anything to them, and that the ruling does not allow Polish border guards to enter Belarusian territory. Well, shortly after that, Poland declared that they could bring humanitarian aid via Minsk somehow, that even there was a convoy with humanitarian aid waiting on Polish-Belarusian border crossing, but they must be approved by Belarusian government, and this approval, of course, was rejected because, as I said, Belarus is claiming that the migrants are in Polish territory. Well, here perhaps it would be good if I clarify where they actually are, as far as I am able to do so, because some of the pro-refugee activists actually tried to put the place of the campment on the map, and they claim that the camp is now located exactly on the border, one half on the Belarusian side and another side on Polish side. Well, So this is the situation. And coming back to the European question and how Europe is now responding to the migrant crisis. Yesterday, I read a statement of Austrian and Serbian governments who said that they will do everything, they will work together to stop Afghan migrants coming to Europe because they had already accepted migrants during the previous refugee crisis and that they don't feel obliged to see any more of them within their territory. So I am afraid that Polish government's attitude, so to refuse humanitarian aid and to lock the borders, will be the attitude of the whole European Union during this crisis.
We need to wait and see, but we need to, if possible, to make somehow a prognosis what will happen, what will follow. Especially, there are at least two elements of this crisis: the political one and the humanitarian one. So, can you make somehow a prognosis about the near future of this development?
Okay, first of all, I would like to say that I am very afraid when opening media outlets and reading official news from the border. Now, I'm saying official because, as I said, no journalists are being accepted at the border for a few days, so we must rely on what the border guards from Polish and Belarus side would write about the situation. I am very afraid that one day I would read that somebody died on the border, actually. And there were already reports that some of those 30 people in the camps were in very bad condition. They spent a few days under heavy rain without, as I said, without medical aid and without proper shelter. So I just don't want to read one day that somebody died on the border because of the geopolitical fight between Poland, Belarus, European Union, and Belarus and Russia in the background. But if you want a further prognosis, it won't be optimist because Belarusian border guards is still producing more and more information about migrants being pushed back from Latvian, Lithuanian, and Polish border. This means that even though now the very mechanism of bringing refugees, bringing migrants to Belarus is now well described, and both Lithuanian and Belarusian journalists described how those people are brought from Baghdad to Belarusian territory and how they are then brought to the border. So even if the mechanism is well described and the Belarusian government can't just say that well, they are coming or food or whatever, um, the practice is going to continue. Lukashenko has no motivation to stop it. Lukashenko is not caring about these people's health and well-being. He is going to keep bringing them to the border just to seek revenge against European Union. I also said that now Belarusian propaganda is playing against Poland and Lithuania and Latvia, and this is yet another reason for which Lukashenko will not stop using these people as a weapon. Lukashenko wants to prove that all the European talk about human rights, about democracy, and necessity to help Belarusians was a mere talk, which was worth nothing, because when there is actually an opportunity to help hungry people, to help desperate people, then European countries are closing the borders and refusing to even offer food and drink to them. So my sad prognosis is that the thing will continue and that nobody is going to make a step back, even to help some of the refugees.
And finally, what is the situation with Belarusians in Belarus right now after a year from the start of the protests? And socio-economically, what is the situation there?
Protests are gone right now. There is no more demonstrations, there is no more strikes, there is no more protest movements. I think that the society is tired. Society is also, I don't want to say terrorized, but a lot of people who used to go to the streets are now scared of what happened next. From the very beginning of the protest, the Belarusian society was divided over them, and there was always a big deal of a society who actually stood behind Lukashenko, who actually voted Lukashenko in the presidential elections, and who was afraid of any changes that could occur in the country. They accept the stability, this kind of stability that Lukashenko built, and they are pretty afraid of having a violent change, political change in the country. And these people, for sure, were not protesting, and they are now, well, living their ordinary lives as they did before. As for people who with opposition thinking, from democratic thinking, they also feel today that the protest wave is gone and that the state simply turned out too strong. The system turned out too strong to be overthrown. And after a lot of journalists, a lot of local activists were given prison terms, the others are simply afraid to protest again. And that is the situation in Belarus now.
So at this moment, facing a number of crises with regard to Belarus and on the border with Belarus, I guess the EU will have to focus its attention to one more crisis in its neighborhood, and we'll be waiting to see new developments and react on them. Thanks, Malgorzata.
Thank you very much.